Now that you have the sketch for your coil pot, it might look something like this, and then off to the side you drew at least 4 coils that you want to try to incorporate into your pot. You are now going to be practicing how to make coils. So in one of the slides that I show you, there is a page on there, and it shows you this image, and it shows you different types of coils that are possible. However, I just want to point out these are not the only types of coils. You can get super creative with it. You can also make sculptural forms like I talked about, but if you're like wanting to see some more coils, this is just something on my Pinterest page that I found some different types of coils that not all of the ones that are on here are on the other ones, including these donut ones, these sphere pieces as well, and then the braids, okay? And I know a lot of you, the braids and the twist, are interested in that, okay? So the first thing we would want to do is wedge our clay. We're gonna be using terracotta clay, okay, which is just a different color. It's very similar working abilities. So when you're wedging clay, you're pushing forward and rolling it back and then pulling it up, okay? There's a lot of hand gestures you're doing here to get a nice wedge. And then remember, you can also hit it on all the sides to really compress the clay and get all the air bubbles out. Okay, so the first thing, just getting a coil and then shaping it. So the first thing you want to do is get your clay into a longer form just from the get-go. Okay, so all I'm doing is squeezing the clay with my hand, and I'm trying to squeeze it evenly so that when I do roll it, there's not like a big chunk here and it's really thin down here. So I'm just twisting it and squeezing it until I have like a longer piece. Okay, so this is something I'm gonna start with for rolling. Okay, once I have that, I am going to take my open palm of my hand. I can use 2 hands as well. And I'm going to be applying even pressure. And I'm going to push outward. If your coil tends to look flat, you're not using the whole length of the table. You're just kind of going like this with the coil rather than all the way across. Okay, it needs to touch every side. Once this gets really long, as you start to roll this side isn't gonna work. So I'm just gonna cut this off because it's pretty long already. So depending on the thickness that you want it, I wouldn't go any thicker than, let's say, I wouldn't go too thick. You probably want to keep it, I would say the thickest you could do it would be double this size, which may be a little bit bigger than the width or the size of your finger, okay, or thumb. So once I have that, now I can start twisting and turning into these different shapes. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a spiral, which a trick that you can do, because sometimes when you just bend clay tightly, you're gonna get a bunch of these little cracks on the surface. So something you can do is have a cup of water nearby and just take that water and kind of rub it on the surface of the clay. All right, so now it's gonna bend really easy and hopefully not do any cracking. So I'm gonna start over here and I'm just going to do, sorry, I wanna try to get this a little closer, and I'm just going to be spinning it. So these can be as big or as short as you want. I'm going to stop it right here. Okay, so now it looks like that. You can see my hands are dirty. When I pull that around, I am going to be blending that into where it touches, okay? Another thing that you want to do to make your coil really strong is on the back side, so the side that you're not going to see because it's going to be on the inside of the pot, we want to blend this, okay? So you can use a scoring or a needle tool or a scoring tool, one that scratches the clay, and also a blending tool. Let me grab a needle tool right here. So, you know, I said to like scratch it. You're just going to take the needle tool and kind of move it around like that. And then you can take your wooden tool and further just really get that all blended. So it should look nice and smooth. So I've made a few of these ones already. And this is what they look like on the back side. So right now we're just practicing making the coils. We're not building yet, okay? So another one you can do is the vertical coils, which basically is really simple. Once you have your coil made up, you're just going to cut them to an even height. I'm gonna start fresh. Okay, so, and then I can lay it right next to there if I want it to the same height. You might not want it at the same height, but if you do, that's an easy way to get it, okay? So I'm just gonna show you the start of my actual coil pot, and you can see my vertical coils. So all I did was I lined them up against each other and slip and scored all of them, okay? So if the clay is wet, you can get away with not slipping and scoring in between each coil, but you must kind of compress them together. And when you start to attach them, okay, you'll slip and score to wherever you're attaching to. So if I was attaching to this, I would be scratching right here, scratching at the bottom of this piece, adding some slip and sticking it on there. All of the coils on the inside of the pot will be blended. It will look really smooth on the inside. If you could see this one, you would be able to see that. But the blending tool, actually the pointed side, is really going to be helpful to pull that clay back and forth over those seams to really make it a strong connection. You can do this before you attach them to your piece. Sometimes that can actually be easier so it doesn't stretch out the walls of your pot. So, you know, like you could blend 4 or so and then continue to build up, okay? All right, so another one on here, there's some squarish looking spirals. That's as simple as like paddling your circular spiral on the table to get harder edges. So you would hit it on 4 sides. And you know, if you hit it on more sides, it's just going to give you a different shape. Okay, so now I'm starting to get that like square spiral. So these are just horizontal bands. All I did was I took a long piece and wrapped it around. I slipped and scored it to the next one. I started making little sphere ones that I could fill in spaces. On this picture, there's some archways. There's some donut ones. So pretty simple there. For the donut ones, you can use actually a tool if you want, or a pencil, and just wrap your clay around that and kind of blend it together here. And again, if I would have used a little bit of water on the surface, I wouldn't have had these cracks. Obviously, the less cracks you have, the stronger your piece is going to be. So I can kind of turn this to get it nice and even in there, and I could slip and score that to my piece, okay? The archways, Pretty simple there. All you're going to be doing is wrapping them around each other, and I kind of did that on mine here, so the coils just like laid on top of each other. You can stand them up way though. You can do that as well. Okay, the last one that's a little tricky is the braiding and the twisting. The twisting isn't so bad, but the braiding is like braiding hair. So you do want to start with a little bit of a thinner coil. And for time's sake, I'm going to do the braid. The twist, I can show you guys, but it's a lot simpler. Okay, so for the braid, the first thing I do is kind of pinch it right here at the top. Okay, so that they hold together, and then I'm just going to overlap the clay to get that braid that I want. So if your clay is not wet, I can guarantee you're going to have some issues with this in terms of cracking. So make sure that if you start to feel a stiffness in the clay that you're using, we learned how to reconstitute the clay. It's the same exact way as you did before. So just go to the sink and squeeze some water into your clay. Okay, so whichever side is the back of your braid, if you can, kind of tap it on your table, flatten it out just a little bit, okay, and try to blend to some degree. Again, this is just going to make it stronger. If you don't do some of this preliminary stuff before you start attaching, you are going to have cracks and issues when you go ahead and start building. Okay, so something like that. And then obviously wherever I touch it, wherever it connects to, it will be slipped and scored in those areas. I can fill in gaps with these. So the first step is practicing making your coils. And when you finish making your coils, I do have to check you off, and they should be smooth. They should be blended on the back. You can keep them to use them for your pot, but right now we're just practicing, and I made the rolling the coil look pretty easy. It takes some practice, so be patient with it and try to do your best. All right, thanks for watching.